If you know anything about Egypt, its name always will be synonymous with mega projects. From the Great Pyramids of Giza, to the Suez Canal, and more recently to massive cities and parks in the desert. We have no shortage of achieving massive feats of engineering, so I couldn't think of a better first feature to add to my game. Before adding mega projects, however, I need regular sized projects and a population first. So I started work on the city generation script. You can see how I worked on the art for it in my previous devlog. I now worked on the logic that keeps track of how many of each building was created and what resource it consumes and produces. I also created a script that kept track of the population. Being a fantasy game inspired by a D&D campaign I was working on, I made sure that the population was made up of unique and varied races. So far, I just set up the system in place. The actual content and races I will add in the future. So if you want to be a part of this and help come up with interesting races, policies, spells, or any of the other elements I'm intending to add to the game, you can join my Discord group over here, or you could write your feedback down in the comments below. The way I handled having the option for different races and building types is the Godot resource system. It's a pretty good way of acting as a data container, similar to scriptable objects in Unity if you're more aware of how that works. In general, I can create instances or copies of what I define. So I could create copies of buildings, but this building has the image of a house, while this building has the image of a military barracks. It can also have different data attached, such as the cost, what it produces, what it needs in order to produce stuff, and a bunch of other logic and data that I can have connected to it. Not to mention, I made yet another change to how my map looked. Last time it looked like this, but I didn't like how both the building and the terrain shared the same color palette, making them blend in together so much. So I changed the palette for my terrain and created this. For now, this is the most recent and probably the last iteration I'll be doing on the terrain. I might change it again in the future. However, it's here to stay for now. I also changed the buildings yet again, especially since I now have a color scheme in mind. I want to have each and every color available in my palette represent a different type of building. So one color would be for military buildings, one color will be for the tech guild that you control in the game, so that at a glance from a distance you can look at the map and you can pretty much tell which guild has the most power in the city. And you can also pretty much tell what your policies are exactly doing, which industries have more presence on the city map. The last thing before mega projects, however, was the actual largest thing across the Vuno skyline. It is the landmark of Vuno in my D&D campaign, and it's the core of the roguelite aspect of the game. This is Mount Lucca. It single-handedly deters any invaders from Vuno, and it gives Vuno its legendary defensibility, whilst constantly wiping away all the hard work and achievements the gnomes make. In a way, it is the antagonists, the entity that you need to learn to tame throughout the game. With that out of the way, let's look at some gnome-made creation. I started to draw a few simple projects to get a feel of how they would look and how they would update the map of Vuno. This tile set is the first thing I came up with to test out size, shape, and color. And after placing them around the map, I then decided to start improving on at least a couple temporarily, to have something as close as possible to the final look. That led me to these. The tower is a direct replica of the bell tower of St. Mark's Basilica, a landmark of Venice that has even been featured in plenty of the AI-generated concepts I've been showing around. And I'm happy with how it looks and how it turned out, especially given my very limited pixel art skills. And I hope that over time, as I make more and more assets towards release, I can improve and make things that look more unique or more specific for the gnomish architecture and that have more of a fantasy vibe. I also created this. These walls, in the future I intend to add more variation and make them pop a bit more. Since in the D&D campaign I ran that inspired the world of Vuno, this wall held a lot of significance. It's why Vuno managed to stay independent throughout its history and is a testament to gnomish engineering. But for now it acts as the limits of the city. I might add outskirts later, but for now, the gnomes dare not venture past these walls, and nothing has the power to break through them either. Combat will be a system that I may or may not incorporate, as Vuno has a very proud military tradition that I want to show to the player, but this might substantially increase the scope. So if I choose to not add it, at least I can mention combat in events and in dialogue. But I wouldn't have a particular mechanic around it, and thus I need to find a purpose for the walls and an artifact for them to house. The tower I showed earlier is an example of a simple mega project. I intend to have different types and different tiers that serve different purposes, but all of them will be ways for you to directly invest permanent meta upgrades into the city itself. They would also house one or more of the artifacts that you are finding or making as the Tech Guild Master of Vuno. As a result, they will survive the volcanic eruptions. I might make a shell of them that needs to get repaired after every eruption. The repair process should be faster and cheaper than building them from scratch, or I could make them all guarded from the destruction, perhaps as a side effect of the artifacts. The decision will mostly be based on the game balance. I'm pushing it later down the line. I also need to decide if their locations are fixed or you get to place them down. Some of them will need to have fixed locations. For example, I intend to add a land reclamation mega project that gives you more buildable space. And some structures need to be placed in certain areas. For example, the council building canonically was built into the mountain, so I want that to be maintained. So again, I'd love to hear your thoughts, either in the comment section below or on my Discord channel. If the game concept seems interesting, I'd love to hear what you think and what you would like to see added to it. Next week, I'll hopefully be talking about the second feature of the game, which I teased with this sneak peek earlier. That is the council voting system. It is where you get to influence the city more broadly, where you'll be able to use your diplomacy, espionage, and blackmail to get your goals met. Now, don't forget to subscribe to my channel to see the newest devlog the moment it releases. Until then, thank you for watching.